The Shape of Mind. This is a 4-part series exploring consciousness, mind, and ultimate reality, inspired by the work of theologian and philosopher David Bentley Hart. Why can't science explain your mind? It's the problem that won't go away. There's a question that sounds simple, but it's stumped the greatest minds in philosophy and science for centuries. It's this: what is your mind? Not your brain, your mind, the thing involved right now in hearing or seeing this, in forming opinions, and most profoundly, noticing that you're noticing. What is that? You might expect that after centuries of scientific progress, we'd have this figured out, but we don't. In fact, the more seriously we take the question and try to come up with answers, the stranger and maybe more ungraspable it becomes. And this tells us something profound about the nature of our minds and of reality itself. Today, we're beginning a 4-part series exploring some of the most challenging and rewarding ideas in contemporary philosophy of mind. And I'll be drawing largely from the work of theologian and philosopher David Bentley Hart, one of the most cogent, rigorous, and provocative thinkers living today, at least in my opinion. We tend to think there are 2 kinds of stuff. Our modern notion about the world comes packaged in a 17th century idea that there's 2 kinds of things. There's matter, the physical stuff, atoms and forces, neurons firing, and then there's the other thing, the mind, the thinking, feeling, experiencing thing that seems to be you. This notion of a dual nature to reality goes back to the 17th century philosopher René Descartes, who argued that reality is fundamentally divided. There is the material world, which is purely mechanical and follows mathematical laws, and then there's that thinking thing, which is immaterial and does the experiencing. It's not connected to the material. The theory immediately creates what philosophers call the interaction problem. If mind and matter are completely different kinds of stuff with no common nature, how do they interact? How does the purely physical event of neurons firing give rise to the purely mental experience of seeing red or feeling grief or understanding a subtle joke? There's no logical pathway to accomplish this. The 2 worlds are too different to touch each other. Some thinkers even proposed a solution called occasionalism. The idea that God has to step in every moment and coordinate mind and body, material and mental, because the 2 worlds can't do it themselves. It feels like a stretch as it tries to solve the problem of duality. The modern solution has its problems. Modern materialism tried to escape this trap. The move was straightforward: just deny one side of the equation. It's the concept that there is no immaterial mind. There's just matter. The mind is simply what the brain does. Consciousness is an emergent property of sufficiently complex physical processes. Everything is merely a physical or mechanical process. Though this solution is popular among a great many naturalists, in the scientific community, it doesn't actually work. And here's why. The view requires us to take something we know with absolute first-person certainty, the fact that we are conscious, that we are experiencing things and are aware of that, and that there is something real happening for us to experience reality. Materialists have to treat this as a kind of illusion, or maybe just a side effect of processes that are fundamentally mindless. Some philosophers have followed this logic to its conclusion and become what are called eliminativists, thinkers who argue that mental states as we normally understand them simply don't exist. Beliefs, desires, intentions, experiences, these are, within this view, folk mythology that science will one day replace with a better story told purely in terms of chemistry and physics. David Bentley Hart finds this position not just wrong, but almost paradoxically self-defeating. Because to argue that intentionality doesn't exist, you have to use intentionality. To claim that meaning is an illusion, your claim has to have meaning to it. It has to mean something. We simply accept this blindly to be the case, that we have intentions and we have meaning. You cannot really step outside of consciousness to critique consciousness. The attempt to escape the intentional stance always loops back around to itself. It's recursive. So here's the deeper point. What this misguided conclusion reveals is that we've been asking the wrong question. The problem isn't simply how to fit mind into a materialist picture of reality. The problem is that the materialist picture was never adequate in the first place. It can never go back far enough. The ancients and the medieval worlds understood and accepted something that we've forgotten. that mental order is prior, that the shape of reality is not blindly mechanical, but has intrinsically intelligible, mind-like structure just baked in. The question isn't how mind emerges from mindless matter. The question is, why are we accepting the idea that matter was mindless to begin with? In the next video, we're going to go deeper into what consciousness actually is and why it refuses, stubbornly and beautifully, to be reduced to anything simpler than itself. If you found this interesting or even frustrating, or if this has raised more questions than it's answered, that's the point. These are questions worth sitting with and sinking into to come up with better ideas of our place in reality. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and if you have any thoughts or pushback, share those in the comments with kindness.